Hey friends, just want to take a minute and address what's going on with the recent announcement by President Trump and the new Space Force to be built, to be created. There's been a lot of jokes going around about it, a lot of laughter, a lot of tongue-in-cheek stuff. But this is something serious. This is something that I've been tracking for quite some time since starting up the Secret Podcast, and it goes deep. And I want to share it with you guys briefly. Hopefully, I don't get too long-winded. But there's a whole history behind this, and I think it's something that we need to be mindful of because things are being moved into place here, and it's going to sound tinfoil hattish, but I promise you it's not. It's well researched and well sourced. If we can go back, well, we'll go back a lot of different directions. But let's start. If we go back to the most recent election, where all the controversy and drama with President Trump, and think back to the WikiLeaks documents, and that's where a lot of this started to come out in some way, shape, or form. Apollo astronaut Edgar Mitchell was in communication with John Podesta. John Podesta was the head, or he was the chairman of the Hillary Clinton campaign. He also served on Obama's administration as an advisor, and I think he worked for President Bill Clinton as well. So he's a well-connected guy, well high up guy. He was tweeted towards the end of Obama's run, his biggest regret is not handling the disclosure issue and making the knowledge of UFOs public. Hold that thought. We're going to come back to that. Edgar Mitchell, the Apollo astronaut, was reaching out to John Podesta, and through John Podesta's secretary, this was all disclosed through WikiLeaks, they're in the process of setting up a meeting. Now, what Edgar Mitchell was claiming was that Edgar Mitchell, again, a credible guy, said that he had been in communication with ETs. I know that sounds crazy, but this is what Edgar Mitchell's saying, not me. And he said that they were willing to share what's called zero-point energy. Now, zero-point energy apparently will get rid of our addiction to oil on this planet. But in order to do that, they wanted the governments of the world to promise not to weaponize space. That was their condition. Edgar Mitchell died shortly after, and as far as we know, the meeting never occurred between Edgar Mitchell and John Podesta. However, of those WikiLeaks, it also came out that Podesta was in touch with Tom DeLonge of Blink-182. Tom DeLonge was working with Podesta to release a series of 3 books, and in addition to create what's known as To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences. Now, that took a little bit more of a delay to get out there, but then this past November, the To the Stars Academy launched what was called they had a big disclosure moment, with former Pentagon officials, former the Assistant Secretary of Defense, Chris Mellon was in there, Luis Elizondo, a career counterintelligence guy, Hal Puthoff. You do your research on Hal Puthoff and the things he's been involved in the government. And what they acknowledged was that UFOs are real, and they released some footage of it from a U.S. Navy video. That was further supported by acknowledgement through the Pentagon via the New York Post and the Washington Times, saying that UFOs do exist. We don't know where they come from, but no known military or country has these capabilities of the craft that we've observed. So this is a real phenomenon. It came out back in November. Now fast forward and you've got President Trump saying we're creating a space force because this is all connected. It sounds crazy, but I encourage you to check out the Secret Podcast. I have an archive. It's at least 12 podcasts, set up in a playlist regarding this subject. I know I'm throwing a lot of information to you, but everything I've talked about, I have heavily sourced and heavily researched, and I think we need to be aware of this because the future is moving this way. Take the UFOs and ETs out of it. The other thing that we're looking at is the weaponization of space. We've got foreign adversaries, to include Russia and China, who are weaponizing satellites to be able to either attack, take down, or take over our own satellites. I'm not saying weaponizing space is the way to go, but there's a lot of interest and a lot of activity, and a lot of things going on that we're not quite privy to. Last thing I want you to look up is Dr. Stephen Greer. Dr. Stephen Greer recently had a movie come out on Netflix called Unacknowledged, and it has all of these former high-level officials who are now coming out saying, yep, we've worked on these black projects, UFOs do exist, and we have them in the government. Again, it sounds crazy, but you're going to want to check it out. Unacknowledged on Netflix. And back in 2001, look into the Disclosure Project by Dr. Stephen Greer, where he had a congressional testimony in front of the National Press Club with expert-level witnesses, military, law enforcement, government officials, sharing their knowledge and direct experience with UFOs and some claiming ETs. There's more going on here. I know we laugh when we see this, but please pay attention to it. Check out sixthsensemedia.net. Look for the link for the podcast playlist talking all about Tom DeLonge, WikiLeaks, UFOs. I know it sounds crazy, but this is legit. Like I said, it's heavily researched. All the stuff I have. I'm not just listening to some random guy in his garage on YouTube. Kind of like me, I'm some random guy in my basement on YouTube. But please, I encourage you to check it out before we just dismiss what's happening in front of us, because we need to be well informed before we either support or go against whatever's being developed in front of us. It's very important. Thanks so much for listening, my friends.